She watches rats drag bananas and a roast into a pothole that isn't there. And when the last rat pushes the road cones into the hole, the asphalt seals like nothing ever happened. Agnes decides, if rats can make portals, so can she. This is Chapter 5 of The Trouble with Angels, a cul-de-sac of possibilities. If you want to keep binge reading Bob and Hannah's adventure right now, start at Chapter 1, link in show notes, or our Season 1 hub, link in show notes. And if you know someone who loves liminal little neighborhoods, cozy surrealism, portals that behave like bad office doors, and rats running what appears to be an extremely organized smuggling operation, share this episode with them. Previously on The Trouble with Angels, Heaven's bureaucracy is creaking. The paperwork is getting weird, and Hannah, already carrying grief and exhaustion, has discovered that when an angel shows up with an assignment, it's less inspiration and more cosmic HR violation. And somewhere in all that divine dysfunction, reality has been leaving little cracks in places nobody thinks to look. A Cul-de-Sac of Possibilities by Glory Fink. Once upon a time, there was a young woman named Agnes. She grew up in a quiet little town where nothing much ever happened. It was a nice, peaceful place that didn't feel quite right. Something was off, but she couldn't put her finger on it. Her parents were kind, pleasant folks, but Agnes wondered if either of them had ever had a deep thought, a moment of their lives. It was as if they were operating on autopilot all the time. It often seemed like most of the folks in her town were always just going through the motions of life without really thinking about it or even asking themselves why they did what they did. In fact, the only person she felt like she could have a meaningful conversation with was her great Uncle Yancy, a true character of a man with a wicked sense of humor and a soft spot for animals and foolish people. Growing up, Uncle Yancy would captivate Agnes with tales of the great big world, stories about exotic locales, and courageous heroines who overcame great odds to succeed. She dreamed of one day leaving her hometown and seeing the sights of Paris, Nebraska, and Westwego. One day, for no particular reason, this all became too much for Agnes. As she walked onto a side street near her house, she spied a dark, shaded cul-de-sac with empty, overgrown lots, as if the builders had forgotten about this blind alley, or they just stopped building houses right before starting on this dead end. At the edge of the cul-de-sac, there was a smattering of road cones. Perhaps there is construction going on there? She wondered as she stopped to observe the liminal space. Then a rat scampered across the rounded dead end, dragging a raggedy-looking color magazine, and disappeared into an open pothole the road cones were placed around. This surprised Agnes. She'd never seen a rat in the wild, only as pets or on television. She walked over to a nearby shaded tree and waited. Now 2 rats scampered across the road to disappear into the pothole. One with a partial bunch of mini bananas, and one with a beautiful blushing red apple. Were these rats raiding a grocery store somewhere nearby? After another moment, a crowd of several rats marched what looked like a leg of roasted meat across the cul-de-sac and into the pothole. The last rat marching at the tail end of the troop lingered for a moment to survey the cul-de-sac by scent. Agnes held her breath and leaned back against the trunk of the tree, and then the rat pushed each of the 3 road cones into the pothole and jumped into the hole itself. Agnes waited a moment, and then started slowly walking to the spot the last rat had disappeared into. But there was no pothole, no markings of any kind. She kneeled down to touch the road. It felt solid, but also as if Agnes's stomach was about to flip-flop inside her. She moved away from the area and sat down on a nearby bench. Her stomach settled, and she pondered what she had just witnessed. She entertained the idea that perhaps she had imagined some or all of what she'd seen. Agnes took a long, slow inhalation and then stood up. placed her hands in her jacket pockets, and resumed her walk around the neighborhood. Over dinner, she mentioned, "Have either of you heard if anyone is planning to build something in that cul-de-sac between Beauregard and Bloomington?" "I don't remember anything between Beauregard and Bloomington. It must be new." Her father looked slightly perplexed, but shook his head and took another roll out of the basket. He absent-mindedly said as he buttered his roll, "It's best to stay away from construction sites. They can be dangerous." "Stay away from danger, Agnes, dear." Agnes said nothing further about the cul-de-sac that evening. A few weeks later, Agnes went outside for a leisurely stroll, but her feet had other ideas. While she was daydreaming about what Paris looks like in the spring, in the blink of an eye, her feet brought her back to the shaded tree in the overgrown cul-de-sac between Beauregard Lane and Bloomington Street. 3 rats doing a great impression of the Three Stooges trying to move a sewing basket, but none of the 3 rats could seem to agree on who would pull it and who would push it, or if any of them would lift it together, so they ended up inarticulately rolling the sewing basket, which thankfully had a very secure latch on it that kept the lid from flying open, but heaven help the poor soul who would have to untangle everything inside. A few days later, as Agnes was arriving home mid-afternoon from her part-time job housekeeping for the elderly Miss Beulah, she opened the kitchen door and announced herself. "Mom, Dad, I'm home. Your Uncle Yancy is back in town and said you should come over for a visit." "Okay, I'll do that. Bye, Mom." Agnes hollered as she put her light spring jacket back on and walked out of the house and headed over to Yancy's place. Once Agnes arrived at Yancy's, she knocked on his kitchen door, waited a moment, and then let herself in. She announced herself. "Uncle Yancy, it's Agnes. Mom said you wanted me to come over."
"Agnes, bring out the tray once you've boiled the water in the tea."
She saw on the kitchen table a tray laid for afternoon tea. Once the kettle boiled, Agnes poured the hot water carefully into the teapot and placed a special little sweater on it, picked up the tray, and walked out to the backyard. Yancy held the backyard door open for her. Yancy and Agnes caught up over tea, but during a lull in their conversation, Yancy said, "What's on your mind, Agnes?" "Uncle Yancy, from the outside, it seems like you have everything you might want in your life here in this town. What leads you to travel far away for weeks and months at a time?" Yancy sipped his tea and pondered for a moment before replying.
"This town is idyllic, and I enjoy being here when I'm here. But there is a whole universe to explore as it's constantly changing in big and small ways. I'm often surprised and sometimes delighted in the evolution of people and places. Change is its own kind of ephemera, so every once in a while I feel like I need to revisit places and see old friends so I can witness their progression. To witness and comprehend is a kind of gift I treasure, Agnes." "That's beautiful. It's something for me to consider during my meditations. Thank you." She stood up, hugged him. "I need to go do something. Do you need help cleaning up?" "Go on your adventure, my girl. I'm here when you return so you can tell me all about your experiences. I'll take care of this."
She squeezed his hand one last time as she gave him a big smile and headed straight for the kitchen door and outside to the cul-de-sac. Then she settled in to watch her new favorite show, Rats and Their Loot. Agnes was so deep into her thoughts that she didn't notice when a rat popped out of a pothole that wasn't there a few minutes before. Agnes heard the rat gibber and sigh. And then the duct tape rolled. A rat galloping after it. The rat stood on top of the side-turned duct tape roll and sniffed the air. A rat appeared dragging a half-empty box of pencils. The third rat ran across the road with a black box couch box cutter held safely in its mouth. What in the world would a rat need with a box cutter? The rats seemed like they must be in a hurry because they didn't even sniff the air. And in the blink of an eye, the cul-de-sac was quiet again. Even the birds sounded far away to Agnes. Just as before, the closer she walked to the spot, the more nauseous she felt. This time, Agnes took a deep breath, sat down crisscross style, and centered her mind. If rats can create a portal, shouldn't she be able to? She opened her mind to what an unsafe, unpredictable, and unknown world would be like. It would have lots of conflicting noises, cars rumbling, horns honking, people a little too loud, a little bit surly and sarcastic. Yeah, whatever. Hey, watch yourself. There would be weird smells, diesel trucks, strange cooking, dirty animals and people. And then a whisper of a thought occurred to her. After imagining all that disharmony, can I even bear the thought of leaving this peace and safety? Absolutely. A life of surprise and peril will always yield better rewards than a life of peace and comfort. And with that, her eyes still closed, she stood up and walked forward into somewhere else entirely. Next time on The Trouble with Angels, a door opens where there shouldn't be a door, a brand new world smells like exhaust, fried food, and regret, and Agnes learns very quickly there are places you can enter that don't necessarily want you leaving. Also, somebody files a complaint, because of course they do. You've been listening to The Trouble with Angels by Glory Fink. Take care of yourself, okay? If you're struggling, you don't have to white-knuckle it alone. I'm saying that with my whole chest because I've been there too. If you're in the US or Canada, you can call or text 988 for the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. In the UK and ROI, Samaritans are available at 116-123. In Australia, Lifeline is 131114. And if you're in immediate danger, call your local emergency number, please. And if you want to help this story keep finding its people, you can tap the heart button. Engagement is magic. Leave a comment. Pierre will absolutely read it with his little rat hands like it's sacred literature, and Dottie will try to trade it for a baguette. Toss a coin in the coffee fund. Divine contributions welcome. On Ko-fi, Venmo, and Cash App. Links in show notes. Your support keeps indie storytelling caffeinated, chaotic, and just angelic enough. Stay tuned for The Trouble with Angels at Glorious Magazine, link in show notes, or go to glorythink.substack.com. Stay connected with the Coffee Bunny Crafters Cafe, link in show notes. And you can find me, Glory Fink, as @Glory Writes the Blues on social media, Blue Sky, Instagram, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, TikTok, and Threads. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in Chapter 6. Goodbye!